ちは。皆さんは多分もう日本語がだいぶ上手ですよね。In this lesson, we will talk about things people are good at or bad at, whether in sports or other activities. 今からちょっとスポーツの話をします。皆さんはスポーツをしますか？私はあまりしません。In the previous lesson, we covered how to say we like or dislike something. For example, スポーツが好きですか？嫌いですか？ We learned that you can say, I like doing something by using a verb followed by no, as in, テニスをするのが好きです。To ask which sports someone likes to do, you can ask, どんなスポーツをするのが好きですか？テニスをするのが好きです。ゴルフをするのが好きです。But, if the answer is negative, if you don't like to do it, the contrast particle は may be used with your negative sentence. スポーツをするのは嫌いです。You can also use は to contrast one thing with another, like if you want to contrast playing sports with watching sports. でも、スポーツを見るのは好きです。The way to say whether someone is good at something or not follows the same pattern. You can actually use the same structure as 好きです and 嫌いです。The adjective skillful is 上手な。上手な。トヨタさんはゴルフが上手です。It doesn't have to be just about sports. You can say something が上手です with other skills. For example, I began this lesson by saying, 日本語が上手ですね。In Japan, you will definitely hear that compliment if you speak even a little Japanese. But in Japanese, please do not respond by saying thank you. Instead, a polite response is just to say いいえ and maybe smile a little or wave it off a little. What if someone is not good at something? Of course, you can negate it by saying 上手じゃありません or 上手じゃないです。Not very good is あまり上手じゃないです or あまり上手じゃありません。For example, あの人はギターがあまり上手じゃないですよ。But if there's even less skill or no skill at all, you can also use the word 下手な, which is the opposite of 上手な。下手な。For example, bad at violin would be バイオリンが下手です。You could use 下手 to talk about family members. 弟 is younger brother. 妹 is younger sister. 弟 妹 For example, 弟はまだバイオリンが下手です。妹は料理が下手です。Japanese omits verbs even more than in English. But if you want to say good or bad together with a verb, then the pattern is verb のが上手です or verb のが下手です。This is just like the pattern for 好きです and 嫌いです。あの人は歌うのが好きです。でも、歌うのが下手です。ベッキーさんは 漢字を書くのが上手です。Now, in all these examples, talking about skills, please notice that I have intentionally excluded using I as the topic or the subject of the sentences. It's actually quite awkward to use the adjective 上手な when talking about your own skill. If you say you're 上手 at something yourself, your Japanese won't very 上手. It lacks in modesty and humbleness. It's okay to use 下手 to talk about your own bad skills, though. Similar to 下手, there's another word if you want to say unskillful with added nuance that you're also uncomfortable at something, then you can use the word 苦手な. 苦手な. Again, we have the kanji for hand, while the 苦 or 苦い means bitter. But for talking about your own skills that you do have, there's a different word that's more appropriate. 得意な. Using 得意, 得意な is more like saying your strong point, whatever someone is relatively good at or where you feel relatively confident. So, 得意 does not make you sound too boastful. 私はギターが得意です. Now, if I want to ask you questions about what you're good at, then I use the full question word for what. It is 何. We've seen the shortened form 何 in the question 何ですか? But for other verbs, we mostly use 何, and we combine 何 together with a particle. 何 plus particle. 何が、何を. So you can ask, 何が得意ですか? Or, 何をするのが得意ですか? 歌うのが得意ですか? How do you say I'm good at cooking? You can use the noun 料理 without the verb する. 料理が得意です. How about I'm good at swimming? You can use the verb 泳ぐ plus の. 泳ぐのが得意です. 苦手です can also be used to talk about your own skills or other people's skills. 泳ぐのが苦手です. Let's try to say I'm poor at French, フランス語. And so is my younger brother. 私はフランス語が苦手です. 弟もフランス語が苦手です. The particle も means also. フランス語 is understood the second time, so you can omit it. By the way, 苦手 can also be used to talk about food you dislike or you can't eat. 私は納豆が苦手です. 梅干しも苦手です. So, if you have a guest and are choosing food or a restaurant, it can be a polite question to ask, 苦手な食べ物はありますか? Now, let's learn to combine two things we've been saying separately into a single sentence. I am bad at doing something, but I like doing it. As we've seen, you can express that using two separate sentences like this. 私はテニスが下手です. でも好きです. Here, you start the second sentence with the conjunction でも, which means but. However, でも can only appear at the beginning of a contrasting sentence. If you combine the two ideas into a single sentence, you can connect using the conjunction けど or the more formal が。私はテニスが下手ですけど好きです。or 私はテニスが下手ですが好きです。The conjunctions けど and the more formal が are used in the middle of a sentence to mean but or however. And they are not limited to sentences about skills or preferences. 私は今日は忙しいですが、明日は暇です。Inside the two main parts of the sentence, also notice the particle は is used for contrast about today versus tomorrow. This は particle is used for contrast again in the next sentence, together with another は that is used with a negative, both of which express the contrast. And there is even a third は used with 私 は, which is the topic. Listen and then repeat. 私は寿司は食べますけど、刺身は食べません。Again, I have used the particle は here instead of the direct object particle を to make the contrast between the food I do eat and the food I don't eat. What if you want to express the idea of going to eat something? Then you say, 寿司を食べに行きます。食べに行く means to go somewhere to eat or go in order to eat. 食べ is the stem of the verb 食べる. In other words, it's the must form without the must ending. So, how do we say, let's go to Harajuku to eat a crepe? You can express the destination with ni or more formally with e. Harajuku ni or Harajuku e. 原宿にクレープを食べに行きましょう。Or suppose you want to go to Harajuku to buy something, but you haven't decided what it is. In Japanese, the word for something is built from the question word 何 plus か. So, you could say 原宿に or 原宿へ何かを買いに行きましょう。How about the irregular verb する? Remember, the must form of する is します, and the verb stem is し. So, go do something is しに行く, or in polite form, しに行きます. So, how would you say, I will go to the park to play tennis? Park is 公園. 公園にテニスをしに行きます。In the dialogue for this lesson, two characters begin by talking about sports. Japanese borrowed many sport names from English, and the longer words are often shortened for ease of pronunciation. Since they are loan words, they are written in katakana. Basket, short for basketball. Amefuto, short for American football. バスケとアメフトが好きです。Notice you combine two nouns with the particle と。バスケとアメフト。However, although the English word baseball is recognized, the Japanese word 野球 is used for the most popular sport in Japan. Literally, it means field ball. 日本人は野球が大好きです。Now for a dialogue. Here's the situation. Two guys, Mr. Toyota and Nate, are talking while having sake together at an izakaya, which is a Japanese-style pub or bar. The word izakaya originally referred to a sake shop, sakaya, where it's also possible to sit for a drink. At first, they talk about sports in general. Then the conversation turns to Sumo, Japan's unofficial national sport. Nate doesn't know a lot about sumo, but he has noticed a person dressed like this. この人は誰ですか？この人の仕事は何ですか？この人は相撲の行事です。Where the word for referee is 行事. By the way, 行事 is normally a lifelong job where training starts around the age of 19, 19歳. Unlike many other professional sports, sumo tournaments take place 6 times a year, each one lasting for 15 days, 15日. 3 of the tournaments take place in Tokyo during the months of 1月, 5月, and 9月, which are the 1st, 5th, and 9th months of the year, respectively. The location is in a Sumida neighborhood of Tokyo called Ryogoku, which is the national home of sumo.
トヨタさん、スポーツは好きですか？スポーツですか？するのは苦手ですけど、見るのは好きですよ。そうですか。どんなスポーツを見ますか？野球をよく見ますよ。ネイトさん、スポーツは？僕はバスケが得意です。アメフトを見るのも好きです。そうですか。日本の相撲はどうですか？あ、ちょっと興味がありますよ。相撲のレフリーはとても日本的ですよね。かっこいいです。レフリー？あ、行事ですね。それじゃあネイトさん、一緒に相撲を見に行きませんか？あ、いいですね。面白そうです。場所はどこですか？両国です。来週相撲が始まりますよ。そうですか。じゃあ、一緒に見に行きましょう。
So, at the end, the two guys have made their plan for next week. 来週。ネイトさんとトヨタさんは来週相撲を見に行きます。相撲が来週始まります。Note the verb 始まる. It ends in る, but 始まる is an verb like 入る or わかる. The other 3 sumo tournaments 始まる during the months of 3月 or March in 大阪. 7月 or July in 名古屋. And 11月 or November in 福岡. In the dialogue, Nate has a slight interest in sumo and finds the sumo referee cool or かっこいい. かっこいい. Literally, it's かっこ appearance plus いい good. Many guys try to look かっこいい, which therefore sometimes means handsome, while many Japanese girls strive to be called かわいい. But females can also be called かっこいい. Also, even a fancy car or extremely cool-looking job might be called かっこいい. スーパーヒーローはかっこいいですね。Another adjective Nate used to describe the sumo referee or 行事 was 日本的。日本的。着物はとても日本的ですね。ハンバーガーはアメリカ的な食べ物です。What do you think of sumo? Maybe like Nate from the dialogue, 皆さんも相撲にちょっと興味がありますか？ Sumo is a type of wrestling in a ring between two wrestlers. Whoever is pushed or thrown out of the ring first loses. And once the match starts, you can't touch the ground with body parts other than the soles of your feet. Matches are very short, just 2 to 3 minutes, or it can even be just 10 seconds long. The professional sumo wrestlers must weigh at least 165 pounds. But the heavier, the better. They must also be about 5 feet 8 at least to qualify to be pros. There was a famous wrestler from the 90s who was later found to have surgically added some silicone to his head to reach the required height. 皆さんも日本の相撲を見てくださいね。I hope you get a chance to watch it. とても面白いですよ。You have learned 上手です and 下手です in this lesson. I briefly mentioned that 上手 contains the kanji for up and hand, and 下手 contains down and hand. Those are pretty simple and important kanji, so I will show you how to write them. 上. The character 上 has simple 3 strokes, going from left to right, top to bottom, and then left to right. The opposite is 下. 下. Now, let's see the kanji for hand. By itself, this character is read as te, which is the Japanese word for hand. Te. You also learned how up can be combined together with the character for hand to write 上手です. 上手. Similarly, when te comes after 下, then that combination is a different word that's read as 下手. 下手. Q. It's a simple 2-stroke character. 10. 10 looks like a cross. Q. 10. The next character is used in the word old, which is 古い. 古い. Start with the number 10 character on top and the square box on the bottom, which represents an open mouth. If you add what's called the grass radical on top of this character for old, you get the character for bitter. Bitter is 苦い in Japanese. And it's also used in the word we have used in this lesson, 苦手な. There's a healthy green vegetable used a lot in Okinawa called goya, which happens to have a bitter taste. You could describe the taste by saying, ゴーヤは苦いです. And it's also used in the word we have used in this lesson, 苦手, which means not comfortable with whatever is disliked. 苦手な. It's literally written bitter hand. ゴーヤが苦手です. 皆さんは苦手な食べ物がありますか? Keep up with your writing practice in the workbook. ワークブックにたくさん漢字を書きましょうね。それでは皆さん、また次のレッスンで会いましょう。